Well, good evening and welcome to the Majority Show. My name is Mark Devlin. I'm the host for tonight. Tonight, it's going to be me, Mary, and special guest Allan Sutherland. Mary, what are you going to be talking about today?
Well, I'm going to be talking about Scotland's proposed National Care Service and how it is just not working.
Right, and as I said, I'm going to be talking with Allan Sutherland from Scotland Matters. So please stay tuned. This is Scotland's #1 anti-nationalist show. We're glad to have you with us tonight. And of course, we will also have Zoomers of the Week. So we will be back in just a moment. Right, so welcome back to the Majority Show. Glad to have you with us. Scotland's #1 anti-nationalist show. We have a great show for you tonight, but first, we are doing a new crowdfund for billboards. Some of you may have seen it already on social media, but we decided that we would give ResignSturgeon another go here. Let's put this message up all over Scotland. And if you can support the campaign, we just put it out about an hour ago. We already have raised £256 of our target, which is £4,000. Mary?
Sorry.
You've got a bit.
And our ResignSturgeon campaign way back in 2020 was a big success. It appeared in over 70 newspapers worldwide.
Right, very good. And all right. And so one of the big things about that was that it helped bolster support. I can't tell you how many people have talked to me in the street or other places, and they said, well, I saw these billboards and I thought, well, my God, someone's actually stepping up and saying what we all feel at last. So here we have an opportunity for you to do that yourself. So, okay.
Well, now is the time when she may actually resign. So let's get those billboards running.
That's right. And so to donate, please go to our social media, and you can go to our website after the show, because I haven't done it yet. There will be a link there. So that would be great. Plus, of course, you can join the club by getting your ResignSturgeon t-shirt or mug as well. Here we have
and
it.
It's coming up to Valentine's Day, people. So this could be how you show someone you love them. It's very timely.
Or how you don't love them that much. Send it to a nationalist friend. They will love that as well. In fact, many of them now do want her to resign as well.
And a little bit from the sale of each one helps to support the show.
Okay, and we'd like to thank our friends, of course, at UK Union Voice and United Against Separation for their help in promoting the show. Many of you are watching from those pages right now.
And please remember to let me get this right. Please remember to subscribe on YouTube for our alerts, because once we get to 1,000 subscribers, we get a lot more exposure on YouTube's algorithm. We're close to 700 now, so please tell your friends, tell everyone you know.
I think we might be actually over 700 now, 701 or something like that. Anyway.
Okay.
So anyway, wherever you are, like, comment, share, tell your friends, extend our reach at the click of a button.
And as usual, I will be dealing with the comments tonight, which is why I was a little bit, looking at something else earlier. The comments are rolling in, and I'll try to get to as many of them as I can, but please keep them short so that I can get them up on the screen. Thanks.
Right, so we'll be back in a few seconds. Coming up, Mary will be talking about trouble in Scotland's National Care Service, and I'll be talking with Allan Sutherland about hijacking the SNP's Burns night. Right, here we are back. Well, it's been a very, 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 I've got a lot of veries here, very bad week for Nicola Sturgeon, with her seemingly impenetrable Teflon coating finally coming off. Doesn't matter what she does now, everything sticks like a very messy burnt omelette. So discussing this tonight, we have special guest, Allan Sutherland from Scotland Matters. So I'll bring him on right now. Oh, there you are. Allan, how are you today?
Very well, thanks.
Right. So, as regular viewers will know, Alan is the Run Scotland Matters, and they also do billboards and ad vans and various campaigns, and they also collate the best newspaper letters that appear in the papers on their website as a record. It's quite fascinating, actually. So please do go to their website, scotlandmatters.com. Is it, Alan? It's .com, isn't it?
Yeah, Scotland Matters. We put them out on. There's a number of Twitter pages and on Facebook we put them out on as well. Some of the good ones. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Excellent. But in fact, you had an ad van out just the other day at Burns Supper. That was some SNP Burns Supper. What happened there?
Well, we read that it was actually on the Glasgow Cabbie website that the SNP had a Burns Supper at the Gold Glasgow Hotel, which is Paisley Road West, just round the corner from Ibrox, in fact. So we thought we had an ad van, as you know, going around Central Scotland a couple of weeks ago, and went to the Glasgow Cabbie demo at Holyrood as well. So we've got the same ad van, and we put some. It was a kind of Burns theme, so we had.
I've got a picture of it here.
There
it is.
One of them was, I don't know which ones, I can't see, Mark, but
okay.
One that was a spoof on to a mouse. We sleek at Cowan Tim as Sturgeon, why are you such a wee curmudgeon, that goes on like that. Another one was,
right, okay, very good.
Good.
The mortal memory of Nicola Sturgeon, no plan, no track record in government, no plan for independence, and no mandate. So there was stuff like that on it, and another one with the real people that run in Scotland. Like, it was a picture of Patrick Harvey and the Green, Ross Greer and Fiona Slater and all these people on it as well. So just to remind the people going into the Burns Supper, what people are now beginning to find out more and more. This whole thing's getting into people's living rooms, especially because of the gender bill and its aftermath. So that's what we did, and we knew there was going to be an issue because there's a lot of security there. So we drove the ad van around Glasgow a bit, and then we got it in front of the entrance to the hotel, like the road entrance, not the main front entrance. And it went really well. The main purpose of it was to put the fact of doing it out on Facebook and Twitter as a kind of morale booster, if you like, for people, because it's really topical. And we got a lot of good feedback on it. And you talk about crowdfunders that added another about on the 2 days, the day before and the day after, about another £1,000 onto our crowdfunder.
Right. So you presented it as actually a kind of that secret stunt that you were going to do, right?
That's right, and had a bit of a lead up to it, and all these, as you know, all these things seem to work a little bit, So
it's everything that's all the groups get to do different things and they overlap a little bit, but that's the point of it. If it was just one group, the SNP could attack us easily. I think you've said that to me before. But because we're all different, doing our own things, we can all get on and attack them in different ways. Like we wouldn't have done that Burns Supper, although we've got some other stunts planned, of course, coming up. But it's really good to see you do that as well. Did you get any feedback from any of the SNP people?
Well, that's what I was going to say. There's very little. What I've noticed, I don't know if you've noticed it lately, that a lot of the I saw there was on the SNP Twitter page, there was some, I can't remember what it was something that Sturgeon was on about, and I'd say 90% of the comments on it were from anti-SNP pro-UK people in groups, and I think I wouldn't say they've given up the ghost, but I think they've really lost a lot of enthusiasm. So we didn't get anything back from a couple of things, but we never really get a lot of stick off the SNP, to be honest with you, partly because we, as a group, we don't engage as a group on social media much, It's more individuals and
even social media, we're not seeing much pushback. I mean, we're getting occasional troll here and there, but I mean, we've been putting up things like it's, you should be anyone who's an SNP should be embarrassed, with this debacle, for example. And we're getting very few SNP coming in and saying, I'm really forced. This what's going on here. It's just a disaster, really, for them. And they didn't have much morale to begin with, right? I mean, they had just come out of this the referendum bill getting shot down, and then they come out of this Section 35 bill for the gender bill also getting shot down. So, like, where have they got to go? And then they think, okay, well, maybe if we had a month to recover, perhaps, or we could recover. But this is just, put like another nail in the coffin, as it were.
I think a lot of them don't really know what to think.
Yeah.
I mean, they might have seen themselves, okay, we're SNP supporters or we're in favour of independence, but a lot of these things that are happening, especially this GRR bill, they're thinking, oh,
Well, I think, did they get the big question is, why are we doing this, or why did we get into this independence thing to end up putting women in rapists, in women's prisons? And I think most people are like, well, that's not what we signed up for. We will come on to that in a little in a minute.
It's quite hard to defend, though, isn't it?
It is very hard to defend. Although they're trying, some are trying. Leslie Riddoch was trying today, and it was a disaster, basically, because it just appears to be defending rapists. But okay, anyway, Alan, there was another thing I saw actually that you'd been involved in here. It says Independence Battle makes German TV as Germans warn Scots against Sexit. This seems quite unusual, because usually we have those Germans that group the Germans against Germans for independence or something like that, which is a bit weird. That group, they're always on social media. So how did this come about, this thing here?
Well, we got approached by this ARTE, it's ARTE, initial ARTE, it's the German channel, does a lot of cultural programs, and asked if we'd get involved in it, and they were doing some with SNP, and I didn't really know exactly what they were going to be doing, but so they came up one afternoon, and we were having a public meeting the next week, so they wanted some kind of background to what we're doing. So what I did was I said, we're actually going to be meeting to discuss what we're going to say at our public meeting. So they invited them along to it, and it was actually in Stonehaven. I live in Stonehaven. It was in the Stonehaven Unionist Club, which it's not like Unionist clubs down in Central Belt. It was old Tory club.
Right.
And myself and Mark Openshaw, who does this with me, and Barney Crockett, who was a Lord Provost of Aberdeen, and Regina, my wife, who is German, which was quite useful. We met, and we're just talking about what we're going to say, in a way, as a way of getting our point over, which I think went quite well. And what was interesting is that we got the impression, kind of after they did their main filming, that this was really. The Germans hate Brexit, hate the fact that Britain's left the UK, left the EU, and they're swallowed this thing that of Brexit is the main reason why Scotland wants independence. And there was a lot of questions about that, but we kept at them after, like over the next weeks, and I think kind of neutralised that Brexit thing in terms of what we were saying, So we've got a number of points over it. They're not, they've no track record. The deficit thing, all the usual things, and it took a while for it was actually went broadcast between Christmas and New Year, but there was going to be an English version, so that came out 2 weeks ago.
Okay.
So we watched that. We watched the German version as well, and what it was mostly about was the preparation for an All Under One Banner march in Glasgow. It must have in Edinburgh. It must have been around about September, October. I can't remember it. And the guy, is it Neil Mackay? There's Neil Mackay. Yeah,
he's the journalist anyway. Yes.
Yeah. So it was about him and a woman from I think it was Forfar or Montrose, who was getting our two kids ready to go down to the march, and she was talking about how difficult it was with the cost of living crisis and all that. This Neil Mackay, he can't get a job, so he's doing this in his time. Can't believe.
Must be a different one from the journalist.
Well, I don't know. It's the guy that actually. I read about him later. It was the guy that actually was the main guy in All in One Banner. So anyway, that was what the video was about. The comments were really interesting. There was about 550,000 views of this video now in Germany on YouTube. You can find it on YouTube, and a lot. There was about. A couple of weeks ago, there was about 1,600 comments.
Wow, that's a lot.
And you can look at the comments, and there's a translate button, and there was a lot of people just saying, "Poor old Scotland stuff," swallowing it. But there's a lot of people pointing out that this woman was so poor. She had quite a nice house, and she was able to afford the 50 quid to get down to Edinburgh seemed a really decent person. You know, I don't have any. It was actually quite a balanced thing. For them, it was all about they're all going as banner on the on the march, you know, and interviewing some of the people that were on the march, which, from our point of view, I don't think it reflected well on the whole independence movement. But you know, I could be wrong there. You know, a lot of people are like that. And ours came across, I thought, pretty well. You know,
okay, so we'll put a link to that in the description of the video, and we have a look at that. I mean, I think it's pretty easy to think that the way that SNP would portrays it is that everyone in Europe thinks that Scotland should come back to the EU. And I don't know if, of course, that's true. I mean, there's always different opinions in other in any community, but they can't come back anyway unless they get an independence referendum and win it, which they can't get. So that's not going to happen. Now we're going to come back in a second, and then we're going to be talking about what all the craziness of this week. So we'll see you just in a moment.
Okay.
Well, as it says there, like and subscribe to the show if you can. That would be really great. Now, where am I on my notes? Okay.
You're getting back to Sturgeon, I think, Mark.
We are supposed to be getting back to Sturgeon. Getting back to Sturgeon, that's what it says right here. Let's see how that unfolded. Oh, so a quick recap, or not so quick recap as it may be. It started with SNP with the help of some useful idiots in opposition passing the Gender Reform Bill, which was supposed to make trans people's lives easier by making it easier for them to get a gender recognition certificate instead of waiting 2 years, having to only wait 3 months. But many people rightly asked, if it's so easy to get a certificate, then surely people can abuse the system. I mean, it's straightforward. For example, a person could claim to be a woman to access women-only areas, or perhaps maybe even a prisoner who should be in a male prison could claim to be a woman to get into a female prison and then get access to women. So,
well, I mean, we could see that coming, couldn't we?
Well, of course.
And I think there was an amendment by Russell Findlay. He wanted to add more safeguards to the process for anyone who had committed offences against women, and that was voted down.
Yes.
Actually, wasn't it a tie?
Yeah, it was voted down by the presiding officer, actually, because it was a tie, and then the presiding officer has to make the final decision. But notably, one thing...
Kate Forbes didn't vote.
Yeah, that's right. Kate Forbes didn't vote. She could have turned it the other way. And also, it means if a vote is a tie, it means that every person is responsible, right? Because they could have been the one the casting vote.
Yeah.
Right? So it's... I mean, one of these things, they said it would never happen, and then
lo and behold,
after Nicola Sturgeon and others insisted it's absolutely never ever going to happen. Only a few days later, there's a huge outcry as double rapist Adam Graham, who now goes by the name Isla Bryson, was put into women's prison, and I mean, it's a spectacular blow up by any measure. Just completely destroying the whole idea that of this gender recognition certificate, and the whole idea of Sturgeon's bill is just completely shattered. So what did she do then? She issued a huge screeching U-turn, and the question, if Isla isn't being put into a women's prison, does that mean that trans women aren't actually women at all? Which was nailed in this interview with ITV that I'll put on right now.
Are all trans women women? You haven't answered that question.
Well, that's not the point that we're dealing with here.
That's the question I'm asking.
Trans women are women, but in the prison context, there is no automatic right for a trans woman.
So there are contexts where a trans woman is not a woman?
No, there is circumstances in which a trans woman will be housed in the male prison estate.
Is there any context in which a woman born as a woman will be housed in the male estate?
Look, we're talking here about trans women.
And I'm now asking about women born as women.
I don't think there are circumstances there, but...
So it's different for trans women?
Well, yes, and I'm not...
So they're not equal?
That is not... There is a risk assessment process done for trans women that takes account of the nature of the crime. Clearly, significant concern arises out of sexual crime and whether it's appropriate for them to be in a female prison or a male prison.
So that yes, where she says that trans women are not equal, essentially, was the death of Nicola Sturgeon's progressive career. Well, that's what happens when ideology meets reality.
Well,
Alan,
that's what happens when you don't think things through, which is an eternal problem of the SNP and the Greens. It's like they come. It's like as if the idea occurs to them, and they're like, "That's a great idea," and they never think anything beyond that. The initial idea.
Well, actually,
how would this work
the idea
in practice?
doesn't actually. This is an interesting point you bring up. The idea doesn't actually occur to them, right? It's given to them by other people. Now, some people might say, "Oh, it's the World Economic Foundation or whatever it is," or something. These ideas, the gender stuff, didn't just appear on her show. Nicola Sturgeon one day woke up and thought, "I'm going to do this." She looked at other places and she saw it. And the same with the Greens. They look at other places, these global organizations. And some people, I'm not into this, globalist conspiracy, but basically they are global organizations pushed generally by billionaires. Who have got pet projects, and they say, they put all this propaganda saying, okay, we need to be green and we need to be gender compliant and all this type of stuff, and then useful idiots like Nicola Sturgeon take them on. So they don't kind of appear from nowhere. That's a fallacy. They're pushed. They're pushed, for a reason. And
so the ideas are put into people's heads, basically.
Well, the reason, no, they're not. They're deliberately pushed by global propaganda institutions, and mainly from the US, right? US is gender critical issues. Gender issues are big, so they end up getting washed up on shore here. And what people like Nicola Sturgeon do is they take those on so that they can then try and get kudos from the international community, so that she can go to COP26, so that she can go out and say to her friends in the progressive world movement that, we're world leaders in green energy, we're world leaders in gender stuff and all that. And then, but the thing is, it all can fell apart in her face. I mean, you not think that, Mary?
Well, yeah. As I said, I mean, they spout these things that I still believe that the ideas are put into their head, right? As you say, they're pushed. So the ideas are pushed at them, right? And then it goes into their head, and then they don't think through what these things are going to mean in the real world, or the practicalities, or anything. They have an ideology,
yes,
and that it's like the ideology of independence. It seems to trump everything, no matter what the facts are, no matter how it actually affects people's lives. It's the ideology is above all, and I think that's. And then when they get questioned, and it's just a shame that we don't have better questioning from the media in Scotland, because when she gets questioned, it's like she's just tying herself in knots, trying to say the right thing. But you can't get away with saying two opposing things at once. People tend to notice.
Politicians would like to try that.
Well, they try it all the time, of course.
That's the thing.
I mean, hopefully, people can see through that kind of thing.
Alan, do you have any thoughts on just the general, the lead up to this so far, and Sturgeon's that interview? What do you think of that?
Well, I think the important thing about it is, you had the ferry scandal, the 600k missing, 600k, all the scandals. The Alex Salmon thing, that an MSP that I had a coffee with in Aberdeen just before the salmon scandal. This is going to be the downfall of Nicola Sturgeon. This one is most likely. I don't think it's going to happen soon. If you read Stephen Daisley's article in the Daily Mail yesterday, it might take a bit of time. But the important thing about it, this one compared to the rest, is this spilled out into the living rooms of UK, because Channel 4, BBC News, Sky, they all broadcast it. And guess what? STV and even BBC Scotland started broadcasting the detail of it in these interviews, and I think that's where the big difference. And you got to hold the glass up to the guys that organised that demo at Holyrood, because I'm convinced that's the thing that made a big difference to it. The fact that a well-constructed campaign, and I know, quite in touch with them, I know that they're well connected with all the people in England where this is going to come up, and Germany and all sorts of other countries. There's a network. It's not just pro GRR type network, there's an anti this network going on as well, and they'll get this Scottish campaign is getting held up as one of the best examples of how to deal with it, and that's I think the thing, because they got that campaign on the TV.
Right.
The demo they did at Holyrood was on the television, right. And every time you see something about this gender bill and the aftermath, they've got stock footage of that demo, and that's never happened before. And I think that's the main difference in this one. You know, it's got out of the bubble and into people's living rooms. And
I thought STV hadn't really covered it. I think we were annoyed that they hadn't put anything on.
There's been a bit in STV as well, I think, and it's people know about it. Most people in Scotland still don't know about the Ferguson ferries or any of that.
It's all about different. It's all about okay. Do you really care if the ferry's over budget? But it's a government project. You might expect that, but I think many people do have a fear of perverts in changing rooms. So this is a more primal thing than even independence. It trumps that primal fear, I suppose, trumps trumps anything else. So is the big question, is Nicola's tea out? She lost the support of so many in UK media there. Wall-to-wall negative headlines all across the UK and internationally. Even Piers Morgan, one of our useful idiots, basically said it was gibberish or gibberish. How do you say that? Gibberish?
I say gibberish.
Gibberish, all right. He said it would have been... But here's the thing I was thinking when he says, this is gibberish. It's like, well, you were quite happy before to put her on a platform whenever you wanted a soundbite against Boris or the UK government. But if you had actually asked her about any of her own projects, if you'd asked her about independence, the ferries, the... hate crime bill, anything like that, everything is totally full of holes. She just crumbles under any questioning at all, because the policies she's coming up with are full of holes. This is the thing. It's utter rubbish. And it's really as the emperor's new clothes or the empress's new clothes. And they're just kind of, perhaps you say, Alan, is that these demonstrations and people like us and yourself are saying, look, she's got no clothes on. And then Piers Morgan standing at the side saying, I'm not sure, really, maybe. And then 1 minute they're like, oh, wait a minute, maybe she doesn't have any clothes on. And when she loses the trust of the media, then is that going to be the end of her, or can she continue from here, Alan?
Well, I think I had a letter in a couple of papers about thinking that this is going to be the end of Sturgeon, but I don't think it's going to be anytime soon, because there's nobody to replace her for kickoff. And there was a good article by Stephen Daisley on that. But what it has done, I think this is the tipping point of it all. As you say, she's seen as having no clothes. She lost the rag with that interview you showed with a guy from, I forget which channel it was.
It was ITV.
BBC, I think, wasn't it?
Oh,
I can't remember anyway, but
okay.
But yes. And this thing about basically tarring the whole of Scotland as misogynists.
Oh, it's very poor. That reminded me of what's her name, Hillary Clinton, when she called all the Trump supporters deplorables, and people were horrified.
Just imagine if Rishi Sunak had said that.
No, just
he would have been forced to almost resign or be held to account. And I'm just hoping that tomorrow, when there's First Minister's questions, Douglas Ross says to her, okay, who are these people? Is it Rosie Duffield? Is it was the Ash Regan? Is it Joanna Cherry? Is it J.K. Rowling? Is it all the people in Scotland? Can you just tell us who you're referring to and push her on it? And there's got to be some kind of rule that she's got to be held to account for that, and bringing the Scottish Parliament in disrepute by coming out with that stuff.
Well, they could get her in a lie. I mean, they can. I mean, it is ridiculous. They should. I mean, it's just. She was caught in the lie that trans women are women, except in special cases. Well, then they're not. That's so. Whatever you think of trans women as, anyway, it's just that idea doesn't bear any scrutiny. And the same thing with this. I mean, imagine coming out with that, calling the people, your opponents, racist. It's so juvenile and misogynist. And as you say, if you call J.K. Rowling a racist, it's like. absolutely bizarre. Certainly is bizarre, but she has definitely brought this upon herself. She brought the extremist Greens into power. And they are pushing a lot of this stuff. They push the gender thing. Patrick Harvey, Maggie Chapman. Maggie Chapman shouldn't be anywhere near children, as far as I'm concerned. Shouldn't be anywhere near government. She's a dangerous gender extremist. So, but even with all that, perhaps she's done us a favour by exposing the insanity of self-ID. Mary, what do you think of that?
Well, yeah, I mean, as I said before, it's when these things come up into, practical points, then they just don't bear out, do they? So, no. I mean, before the law was that you had to have, it would be 2 years before a gender recognition certificate. And also you have to sit in front of a medical board, or you have to have a doctor's certificate or something like that. So I think it's not, you don't get it that easily. You have to, go through the process or whatever. But I think taking it down to 3 months, and then, anyone can basically just wait 3 months and then they've got their gender recognition certificate is just ridiculous. And of course, everyone realizes that. So it's a case of they don't really think things through. Although some people, the thing I really don't understand about this is all the MSPs who did think through some of it and had all the amendments, and then they just caved.
Yes, that's very bizarre. I think why would they do that? They could have the bill may not have. I don't know if the bill would have passed without their help. At least at very minimum, they could have abstained. I think as well. And I mean, it kind of makes it's.
But why did they? Has anyone heard anything about why they might have caved and just straight away just voted with the SNP?
Because there's a very strong. I don't know if you've seen there's a video going around. I forget what it's called now. About the woke movement, and the Labour Party has got a big kind of woke section in it. And I think, as it was explained to me, Anna Sarwar's trying to ride two horses, which is what he thinks himself, and to try and keep his party members in Scotland in line. To me, the big thing about this is not being an expert in gender politics or gender philosophy, but the big thing about this is that it shows that if you can get an issue that is the responsibility of the SNP into people's living rooms, so they start thinking, well, that's gender, and then someone else pops up, oh, they're not very good at building ferries either.
Yes.
Then you're building a movement against the SNP that's got some substance, rather than just saying we want them out and we don't want independence. And lots of people have tried pushing these other issues and getting somewhere with it. But what I think the real point is that it's getting out there now, and that's the main thing,
It's kind of interesting. I was reading this post today by Jim Spence, who's a Dundee journalist, and he said that he had talked to 7 of his friends at a party, and they were all SNP or now ex-SNP, and they all declared themselves to be politically homeless. So the question then is, if the gender thing goes away, can the SNP be recovered? And then the next question is, if people move away from the SNP, where will they go? Right? They say politically homeless, but that means at some point they'll vote, right? Will they vote for Alba? I don't think. I mean, that seems a lot of people are pushing Alba, but you've got so many problems with Alex Salmond and the whole idea, which is they've got even less of an idea to how to get a referendum in the SNP, which is zero. I mean, their idea is basically UDI. So. Is that really credible? So when a person becomes politically homeless, that means they are open to perhaps going to maybe going back to Labour, which is, I think most people will do if Labour is resurgent. But Labour is not helping itself particularly with how they're dealing with the gender issue, but perhaps as a cautionary tale for them, they can sort it out, seeing Sturgeon's disaster on it. I mean, it's over to you, Anna Sarwar, I would guess, at that point. Mary.
Mr. Tommy Boy is saying, I didn't realise until the other day that the named persons went through Hollywood pretty much unopposed, and that was even worse than this GRA. So maybe that's just what they do. They don't bother. Maybe it's too much.
Well, I think another thing is that people, it's a little bit exposed, is that people are beginning to realise, well, what's going on in this Parliament? As Ian pointed out in a comment a little while ago, this Parliament costs us £600 million a year to run, 100 million to run the Parliament, I should say, and another 500 million to run the government, the Scottish government. Now, over 10 years, that's £6 billion. And what have we got out of it? We've got this gender disaster, we've got some baby boxes and free prescriptions that aren't actually free, that are just coming from English taxpayers generally, or not even English taxpayers in the southeast and in London. So, I mean, does it really take £6 billion to decide that stuff? You know, Alistair Jack could decide that in the morning. You know, and I don't know what his salary is, but certainly a lot cheaper than £6 billion, even if you had him on for many, many years. So this is a kind of thing that I think people need to wake up and see: is this talking shop really providing us value for money?
Well, Alan Jack's saying that we could build a lot of houses for that.
Well, you could build a lot of for that money. It's a lot of money. You could build hospitals. You can build ferries that actually sail. You could improve road infrastructure and so on, and many, many other things without having a bunch of Greens try to stop the duelling of the A9, for example. Right, we'll wrap up this section in a minute with we're talking about Alistair Jack there. Alan, what do you think about this? Do you think he was right then to block use of Section 35 to block the bill?
Well, I think I don't know, but I think there were genuine objections to what was in the bill, some of the things that were in the bill, and what they've done, and I've done it a few times, is just saying, well, the fact is, we can't avoid this. We've got to look at this bill anyway. But I can tell you now, we're looking at this bill and we can see things that it doesn't fit, as I say. And then the SNP call it this thing. It's on the face of the bill, whatever that means. I don't know if it's sellotaped, a little yellow sticky tab. I don't know what that actually means. But I think they couldn't have picked a better way of doing it, because they've not got into the argument with the gender per se. They've got into this discussion. We're still in the United Kingdom here. It looks to us like your legislation isn't quite compliant. It doesn't fit with the overall UK, and there's issues in that, like practical issues of that. So we're going to have to block it, and we're going to offer you what we want you to do is sit and talk with us. And if you read the National last few days, they're talking about we need to get a debate, a proper discussion with the UK government. So it's worked.
Right. Well, really, I mean, the thing that strikes me about the National is they've completely avoided this gender issue on their front page for the past week. They haven't even mentioned it, well, not a single mention at all. I suppose it feels a bit like the adults in the room said that this bill, the bill was rubbish, and now Sturgeon, the kiddie in the room, has been found out, put her finger in the fire, and it didn't quite work out the way she expected. Well, she tried to turn, as you know, to turn it into a fight about a power grab and all that kind of stuff. But in actual fact, she sunk it herself by, when you're in a hole, stop digging. Sturgeon's motto is, when you're in a hole, keep digging. Right, yes. She'll soon be in Australia the way she's digging. Yeah, and so she wasn't even very smart in terms of how she dealt with everything. Right, okay, coming up, that was great, good discussion there, Alan. Next up, it's going to be Mary. She's going to be talking about another disaster in the making, Scotland's National Care Service. The hint of the disaster is in the national part of it. We'll be back in a second. Thanks for having you with us here. I don't know where Alan's disappeared to, but we'll get him back in a minute. Mary, you're up.
Okay, so tonight I want to talk about Scotland's proposed National Care Service, or Nationalist Care Service, as it should be called, because that's what's happening. The Scottish Government has been planning to create a National Care Service for adult social care by 2026. And this will be under ministerial control. So as if those words weren't chilling enough, they also have plans to expand this later to nationalise children's social care and the criminal justice social work. So, I mean, this is really just the beginning, is what I'm saying, of, doing the adult social care. So, as I said, Mark, this is like the Nationalist Care Service.
Yes. Well, I just made that up, but I thought you were just. I didn't realise that was actually your point.
Yes. Well, that's going to be everyone's point, as I'm going to point out. So, as we know, centralisation is a key feature of nationalism, because nationalism is all about control, right?
That's correct. Oh, I see. I'm supposed to come in at this bit.
Well, you could have if you wanted to. Listen, it's your pet subject, so I usually, when it comes to the evils of nationalism, I usually let you take the lead.
Okay.
And this is one of them. This is
yeah.
one
Well,
of the things that's coming up.
Okay. You know, nationalism is a centralising movement. Obviously, everything has to be done in the service of the nation. So what the Scottish Parliament does is basically tries to accrue power. Every organisation tries to accrue power. And this is the thing that amazes me, actually, because the people who set it up should have understood this. It will take power away, not only from Westminster, which is the intended thing, but it will take power away also from local governments.
And that's what the big thing is this week. So
yeah, that's definitely the issue.
So the MSPs at Holyrood are currently scrutinising the National Care Service Bill. So they're having a look at it, and this will set up the framework from which the new service is going to be built. However, this week the plans are completely in disarray because the UK's second biggest union, called Unite, they have about 10,000 social care staff,
right,
and they're boycotting any further involvement in the plans. They've said it's not fit for purpose. And now they've been working with the Scottish Government for 9 months. But their thing is that they want it to be local and publicly accountable and publicly owned National Care Service.
Okay.
So the council chiefs and the trade unions have got together, and they're concerned about the centralisation of services, and they're concerned about transferring at least 75,000 employees from local government sector into what they call unspecified, unaccountable ministerial quangos.
Yeah, I mean, that's just an excuse to put everyone on the payroll vote, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So basically everyone is directly accountable to Nicola Sturgeon, who won't do anything, or even worse, Humza Yousaf and Nicola Sturgeon.
God help us.
Yes, and then basically, then it's control, right? So you've got control of a bigger budget. You've got control over those people. You can say to them, well, if you don't like us, then we're going to cut your salaries and so on. It's ridiculous. It really is absolute nonsense.
And there's the local government employers organisation called COSLA. They've said that these plans have left their council staff. They don't know who's going to be their future employer. They don't know their terms and conditions or what their pay is going to be. And these uncertainties, we're basically risking years of disruption rather than contributing to making the service better.
Yeah.
So you can imagine the years it's going to take to sort out all the issues and all the problems and everything else. And in the meantime, the service has got worse. It's not getting any better.
Yeah, well, here Karen says, I think ultimately the SNP want to get rid of councils and control all aspects of the government. Of course they do. That's the point. They want a single centralised government in Edinburgh. But the problem with these centralised governments, it's ridiculous because the SNP complain about Westminster being too centralised. That's their whole thing.
I know.
So, and instead, what they want to do is centralise everything in Edinburgh. But when you centralise stuff, when you put that whole care thing instead of putting it under 32 local authorities who can all make individual decisions and so on, once you centralise it, everything has to come through the centre. Of course, that's the point of it as well. But people aren't smart enough to do that. That's the thing. When these big systems, you end up with Humza Yousaf making decisions.
That's the bit that really scares me a lot, is the bit where it says it's under ministerial control. So ministers like Humza Yousaf, he's managing this, he's controlling this. I mean, really, it's going to be an absolute disaster. And how is that going to play out? That's going to play out with, thousands of, people who deserve good care. Either they're being neglected or, people will die from this.
Alan, did you get any thoughts on it?
Well, I agree with what you're saying, but I think I'm a bit closer to needing old age care one these days than you guys are, I think. And,
we're not far off.
I wrote there I had a few papers a couple of years ago saying, I think the way the care, I don't think when I'm needing care, there won't be any care for people like me, because I've got a pension. I'm not loaded, but people like me will lose their house or savings, whatever, and there'll be more and more of it. There won't even get the amount that you do get as a baseline. That's what I think. And nobody's looked, other than some Peter Lilly, if you heard of him, he was a government minister, health minister at one point, who wanted it to be that depending on your status, you could pay an amount of money up front when you retire, like a kind of bond that would cover you for your old age care. So it's going to be about 16k or 30k, and you place a bet on the fact that you won't go into care, so that if 100 people did that, and 10 people needed to go into care, well, that 30k would cover it. It's like placing a bet. They need to start thinking about how they're going to fund this, not how they're going to wrest control out of the councils. And to me, this will be the difference between this and the gender thing is, you don't have half the population saying, well, I don't want a trans guy coming into showers. This is a more difficult point to go over.
Definitely.
And people don't read some big articles in the Glasgow Herald and all sorts of places about it. But people don't read these papers. There's 10,000 people read the Glasgow Herald.
Yeah, it's one of those things. It's not important until it happens to you. That's right. And it's a way in the future.
Yeah, so it's a way in the future for some people.
Even though that's not that far off for some of us.
I mean, 100k a year for a decent care home if you're having to pay for it.
Yeah.
Well, Unite are calling this the biggest power grab in the era of devolution.
Well, that's what it is, of course.
They're calling it an all-out assault on local authorities and democracy.
Yes.
So it sounds like they're out. So I'm hoping it won't happen, because they're not going to be able to get the workers to go along. Well,
there's one guaranteed way to make it not happen, and that is to abolish the whole thing, indeed. And we'll have some discussion about that over the next few weeks.
Yeah.
Right. Thanks for that segment there, Mary. We're going to, it's chilling stuff, actually. We all wonder, there's always that bit in the back of your mind that says, well, what's going to happen when you're older? And what the last thing you want to be is under a bunch of SNP control,
ministers.
Certainly.
Ministers managing what's happening to you.
Good.
That's
all
an
right.
absolute nightmare.
We're going to just move on to Zoomer of the Week.
Yay.
But first, there are things that you can do to help the show and to help us do stuff for you. And number one is help us do billboards, put some billboards together for you, saying ResignSturgeon. There we go. Let's put this message up all over Scotland. Support the Majorities campaign now. You can say, we'll refresh this. We have £272 so far. So we had a few donations since the show started, but we can do some more. That'll be up in a second. Sorry, don't know. So that's great. You can also, of course, buy a T-shirt and a mug, which is...
We didn't see the mug, but let's show the mug.
These could be good. We've sold quite a lot of these, actually.
They're good mugs.
Yeah, they're very good. They're well made as well. And please do subscribe to the show and on YouTube and where else. But, of course, number one, tell your friends about us. That helps immensely. Coming up, it's the moment you've all been waiting for. The moment you've all been waiting for. It is Zoomer of the Week. Right, Alan, you're actually up first with this one.
Well, I think it's pretty easy, really, isn't it? It's Nicola Sturgeon, I suppose. For, like I say, keeping digging when she's in a hole. These interviews were just, any sensible politician would have steered clear of that, but she walked right into it. So, yeah, can't be good for her.
Yeah, she's so used to easy people treating her easy. She doesn't get anywhere near the level of scrutiny that she gets, that any Tory, not even Prime Minister gets, but backbenchers get. You watch some of the things on when there was local elections or elections last time, and the aggression shown to these politicians by the BBC is really quite shocking. I was quite surprised, but she very seldom gets any of that, and always and also treats them very poorly, as well. But so you think that they would, be against her, but I think they want to. It's one of these kind of codependent things. She treats them badly, so they want to treat her nice, a bit like that. But I think that illusion perhaps is shattered now. Anyway,
yeah.
And do you think she's lost the support of the party?
I don't know, Mark. I mean, she hasn't lost the support of Alan Smith anyway. I know that, but right. I think I mean, you've got to look at like Wings Over Scotland, Alba people. There's a lot of people, and if you read the National these days, you know, there's a lot
to avoid it.
Really fed up with her. But you know, when it comes to an election, it's a different thing, you know. And the next election will be, it's not proportional representation. They don't have two choices. They've got to either vote SNP or vote for a party that's pro-UK. And okay, there'll be Alba, but you know, I don't think anybody's going to tactically vote Alba and lose a nationalist MP. So yeah, I think people are going to have to move parties. But yeah,
well, maybe a lot of people just won't vote.
Yeah, I think that's the first. I mean, that's the first stage. You've said that all along. The first stage is disillusionment, and it's like, I don't have a political home. And then, you know, 6 months, a year later, it's like, well, you know, that Mr. Sarwar, you know, says some decent things, or Mr. You know, whatever, someone says that. That's the way it's going to go. For many people, not all, of course. Some people with us true believers will still stay in there. I want to just say to Dave, who put a comment up there, yes, you have to get these quickly because, you know, she might resign tomorrow. So these will be collector's items at some point, and it'll be on eBay in 50 years. That's, you know, think how much the value this is going to go up. Anyway, that's a great segment there.
I think at some point we'll find those in some little curiosities shop.
What do you mean? In a charity store, like with the baby boxes. All right, coming up, Mary's going to do her Zoomer.
Okay. Okay, so my Zoomer of the week is Alex Cole Hamilton, who is desperately trying to backpedal his way from voting for the GRR bill without the amendments that would have helped to keep women safer. And then, lo and behold, a convicted rapist was to be placed in a women's prison. So we all know the story now. But after all that, he had the brass neck to stand up in Holyrood and ask what was going to be done to restore public trust. Well, Alex, if you hadn't broken the public trust, then, you know, you wouldn't have to be restoring it quite so much.
Let's have a look at the video then. Okay.
Can I say from the outset, the Scottish Liberal Democrats believe that anyone who has committed sexually violent crimes and who pose a risk to women should not be housed with women on the female prison estate. That's a view shared by both Scottish and Rape Crisis.
He's saying that now. He wasn't saying that last week.
Triggering and bruising episode for survivors of sexual offences and for the trans community. This has dented public trust in prison safeguarding as well. So can I ask the Cabinet Secretary if he is confident that the outcomes of these reviews will be enough to restore that public trust, and what further steps his government plans to take to reassure people and to heal the divisions in our society?
Cabinet Secretary.
Can I thank Allan Cole Hamilton?
Well, I think that's enough. I really can't believe this. He's utterly complicit in destroying public trust in our elected representatives, and then he stands up as if it was nothing to do with me.
Yeah, it wasn't me. It's like taking lessons from Nicola Sturgeon there.
Well, he completely threw women and girls under the bus. He voted with the SNP, and he told us all that he was doing it for Beth, formerly Jack Douglas, who's a trans sex worker with a long history of threatening women online and a penchant for strangulation and knife play, I've been told.
Right, so that's quite a combination.
So, I mean, really, so you should never have voted for that flawed legislation without the, you know, amendments. I can't believe that.
Yeah. What do you think, ACH, Alan? How do you think he's...
Well, like yourself, I don't understand why the Lib Dems and the Labour didn't allow a free vote like the Conservatives did in this kind of matter of conscience. And I also think the thing you said about the Beth, you've probably seen the video of him praising at this demo, this Beth to the skies. Mm-hmm. And then when it got out, it's been taken off. Somebody's taken it off of YouTube altogether. I don't know how they managed that, but yeah, I mean, it's pretty disappointing, I would say. I don't know the reasons. Maybe they have got good reasons, but it's not very clear to me. As I say, I think in that kind of thing, they should have allowed a free vote to their party.
Yeah, probably should have done that. I mean, I think if you vote for your conscience on it, then, you know, it's better. I mean,
that means he doesn't have much of a conscience towards women and girls, though.
Well, certainly the amendments. This is where it all falls down, doesn't it?
Safety measures have to be put into every
bill. I did have the clip from Russell Findlay, which I think I will play if you give me a second. Actually, so
Russell's good.
So remove that one and then put the new one back on. Okay, just a second. That is there. Okay, here we go. So play this.
Presiding Officer,
Excuse me.
it's taken the scandal of a double rapist in Conton Vale for this to ignite public awareness, public incredulity and public anger. Campaigners who've spent many long years warning and pleading with Nicola Sturgeon have been vindicated. It is now clear to everybody the real reason this rapist was removed was not because of the threat to female prisoners, but the threat to this SNP government.
Absolutely. Okay.
Keith Brown.
I'll just leave that there. That was pretty good. Okay, Mary, that pretty good zoomer there.
Thank you.
I will go back. Okay, it's okay. Next up's going to be me.
Yep.
Right, where are we? What have I got here? Actually, let me see where. Oh yes. So mine is Stephen Flynn. Where am I here? Oh yeah, okay. Who said today that the SNP were offering a life raft to escape the sinking ship of the UK? Well, Stephen, you should have listened to my interview on Talk TV not 1 month ago, maybe 6 weeks ago, and where I said that it's not a lifeboat, it's a wheelie bin on fire out in the middle of the ocean, surrounded by sharks. So, but there's just a lot of whining from the SNP about Brexit at the moment. They had some kind of torchlit parade last night that was attended by a few people. Well, I don't know why people have parades in the dark, because you can't see the number of people there. But obviously, there weren't. Maybe that's why. That's right. That was why. Because you can't see the number of people, and everyone could carry 2 candles to make it look as though there were more, I suppose. But they had that whole leave a light on for Brexit nonsense. And you said many times in the show, I haven't said anyway, the reason they're so against Brexit is because it just completely destroys their plans for Scottish independence. Nobody wants a hard border across the UK. People might say, right, I want to get back to the EU. And perhaps at the moment that is a more popular opinion than it was, swings and roundabouts. But when you say to them, okay, well, going back, that would mean if there's an independent Scotland, you get a hard border, people would change their mind pretty pronto in that case. So he can bleat on as much as he likes about it, but it's not happening. So that's that. Okay. So, Alan, you can decide it's your to decide.
Well, I think the absolute stick out, not just because it was my idea, is Nicola Sturgeon. There could be no other.
Of course, it has to be.
Yeah,
it has to be. There's no doubt about that. It has to be Nicola Sturgeon.
There we go.
Had a shockingly bad week. But not just necessarily a shockingly bad week. As Alan said earlier, it was a tipping point. I mean, we'd been waiting for this tipping point for a long time. Wrote a load of articles about it over the past few years. When is this tipping point coming? And it will come at some point, because there's so many cracks in Nicola Sturgeon's effigies, as it were, that she, at some point it just takes a little thing. And that interview where she said, at that moment where she said yes, and she had to abandon her ideology, then that was a big moment. Now, that means also now that the UK media should be able to now, they know that she can be attacked and can be exposed. So perhaps they will continue to do that. Yeah. So thank you all for that. Thank you for that. Next up, we will be back with another show next Wednesday, February the 8th. A big thank you to UK Union Voice and to United Against Separation and all the other pages and people that support us, including yourself, Alan. Thank you very much.
And if you can, please go to our donate page and make a donation to our billboard campaign so that we can get these ResignSturgeon billboards up all over Scotland.
Yes, so we'll be pushing that quite hard over the next few weeks. We want to just get them up as soon as we can.
And thank you everyone for your comments tonight. Loads of comments as usual.
That is great. So I'll leave you with the thought for the week via Frank Sinatra. And now the end is near, and so she'll face the final curtain. My friends, that's you out there watching. I'll make it clear. I'll state my case, of which I'm certain. It's time's up for Sturgeon. It's good night for me.
Good night, everyone. Thank you.
And thank you, Alan, for being such
a
Alan.
Thanks for having
tonight.
me.
Thank you very much. All right, take care. We'll see you soon.